Okay, come on in. Have a seat. Grab yourself a beverage. Got a story to tell you. It's the story of Kiss. But first, I got a different story to tell you. Kind of going about my day. Things are going well in the early part of the day, and decided to take the dogs out for a walk around 3 o'clock. It's a beautiful day here in southern Manitoba where I am, and sun was out. Temperature is mild, just above freezing. Chemtrails weren't any kind of issue today, so as we're going about our walk, I'm thinking about some of the music content I promised you all here. It's coming down to the last week of March almost, and there's at least 2 more videos I want to do after this one that are kind of specifically music content. So I was thinking on what am I going to talk about when it comes to Kiss, and on the walk I was starting to be able to put together some ideas that I thought would make for a pretty good video. So kind of got back home, got the dogs settled down, and decided to go take a little walk to the back of the property, see if anything's melting out there, just how much snow's in the bush. And we got a ways to go before spring shows up. But then as I'm kind of getting ready to come into the house and shoot this video, well, there was a bit of a episode, shall we say, with the Piggos. A while back I had done a video, I think it was a short, yeah, it was a YouTube short, kind of when I was learning how to do some shots and that kind of thing. And I featured a video of a jailbreaking boar that we got, and anyways, this little troublemaker, he decided to jump into the pen next to him, which was his old man, his papa. And so the young guy, he's about 2 years old. He'll be 2 years old this spring, right around June somewhere. And his dad is significantly bigger, outweighs him by at least 150 pounds, and for whatever reason they don't get along, but he decided to launch his svelte 350 pound frame over the top of the pen and spend some time with dear old dad. And for the winter I keep them in kind of small contained pens, just so they don't waste too much straw, and it's easier to feed them and water them. So it's maybe a 8-foot by 16-foot enclosure for each individual animals, and if there's more animals, I give them a lot more room to spread out. But in any case, we had these 2 big boys, and we ended up with a little bit of a barnyard blood sports going on. So nobody really got seriously injured, but there was a lot of screeching and squealing and grunting and oinking and swearing from me. Yeah, it was just a whole lot of drama, and about 45 minutes to an hour to get them separated. But we did get them separated. By that time, it was time to do the evening chores. So I kind of completely lost my train of thought and the flow state I was in for this video. But we'll see where it goes anyway. So that's kind of the story of the Piggos. Just in case you're wondering, the reason they call them pigs is because they behave like pigs. And that's about all I'm going to say about that for now. But anyways, on to the Kiss saga, or the episode in my life where I came to be more of a heavy metal rock and roll rebel, and it was the band Kiss that really did it for me. And in this video, I kind of put together kind of some ideas that came from the comments, as well as things I wanted to introduce. If you remember back to the Alice Cooper video, I started talking about archetypes, and that plays a little bit of a role in this discussion. But I wanted to talk about like the cultural influence of music, and specifically one comment I had received was a very, very good comment. I enjoyed it. Got me thinking on how, at one time, or it was more kind of specifically that, the music industry doesn't allow for actual individual expression. And it was kind of referencing the idea I had in, I think, the Alice Cooper video about, music being a countercultural expression. And it was sort of, opening the door for discussions like, no, the music industry is a business, and it's about making money. So it doesn't really matter what kind of influence you think you're bringing to the table. The record labels are looking for talent that's going to make them money, and hopefully the artist makes some money at the same time. And to some degree, I completely understand that side of it. Like, I've never been in the music industry. I wouldn't say I understand or know the music industry, but I do believe things are a lot different now than they were back in the good old days, if you want to call it that. The music industry has completely been transformed by streaming, computerized, production techniques. It's a very much different ball game than some of the skill that was involved in engineering and recording and putting a record together. Back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And if you hear my stomach growling, that's not a bear, it's just me. I didn't bring any cookies with me for this video, so you'll just have to bear with me. Just kidding, I got the cookies right here. So. In any case, so the commenter was kind of not challenging me or calling me to task, but I kind of want to respond to that or push back a little bit in that some of these acts, I do believe they were at least attempting to bring a message into what they were releasing musically as artists. And I think Alice Cooper did that in a cultural way, but Kiss very much did that as well. And I've been listening to Andy Edwards fairly regularly, and Alice Cooper and Kiss are two bands he doesn't particularly have any fondness for, and I understand why. It's because we're different people and we have different opinions and tastes and whatnot. But from my standpoint, and this isn't a response to Andy Edwards by any means, but both Alice and Kiss specifically, like they are cultural rock and roll icons. And my first exposure to Kiss as a group was in that kind of iconic recognition. We'll go back in time here. This is when I was just maybe 5 or 6 years old. My aunt had gotten engaged to my uncle, and they had lived out in the country, in a rural place. But my uncle, he was the coolest guy. He played hockey. He was funny. He was charming. Like, he was the greatest. God bless him and God rest his soul. He did pass away at a young age. He succumbed to multiple sclerosis. That's maybe another story for another time. But I remember during their engagement, we were visiting at my Uncle Craig's place, or it wasn't his place, it was his parents' place. I guess he was, still a young man, getting prepared to marry my aunt, who was a young woman. And down in the basement at his parents' house, they had like this rock and roll man cave set up in the rec room, or whatever you may call it, depending on where you are regionally. But here in the basement in Canada, we use that as extra living space, below grade. And so it's like a rumpus room, rec room. You'll have like a second television set, your stereo down there. And it was back in the late '70s, early '80s. You know, the the mandatory wood grain paneling on the walls, and just this cozy little place to hang out. And plastered on the walls were these posters of Kiss, and I remember seeing the Kiss Destroyer, you know, in this massive, you know, 2 foot by 3 foot poster on the wall, and it's like, what the heck is this, you know? And it was just so larger than life, you know. It made an impression, you know, the the Kiss logo emblazoned across it, and there was all this Kiss Army, you know, badges around there, and it's like, wow, this is kind of like this cool thing. These guys look kind of scary. I don't know what to make of this. And so this, before I'd ever really heard any of the music, it's like there was something captivating or something that captured your attention about this group. And I was aware they were a rock and roll act, but I just kind of couldn't comprehend it as a 6, 7 year old kid or whatever I was at the time. But in any case, you know, I associated Kiss with like this coolness because my uncle was cool, and I wanted to be cool, and that's kind of another major theme of this video is just the drive to be cool. So I'm not claiming I'm cool in any way, but it's like an attitude, and so like this was a motivating factor, or the eternal quest to be cool as a young kid coming up through school, and junior high and high school and adulthood, obviously. So in any case, like there was a coolness that kind of just got imparted, or a needing to value this idea of being cool, and that really kind of took hold with my appreciation of Kiss over the years. So fast forward a few years to like grade 6 and 7 in grade school. I remember one of my friends, he had brought some Def Leppard for us to listen to. I think this was 1981 or 82. I think it was a Pyromania album. And I was not prepared for what I was about to hear. You know, back then, I was mostly exposed to whatever my parents were listening to, or whatever AM radio stations, and typically it was top 40 stuff. So there was things like, you know, the old standards, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, but a lot of it was, say, Foreigner, and Toto, a lot of Michael Jackson, Madonna was just kind of coming on the scene back then. So real poppy music. Hall & Oates was, you know, and all these acts are great in their own way, but the moment I heard like that dirty, distorted guitar, and the soaring vocals, and just it was like a light bulb went off, and so I was kind of primed with that. You know, whether you call Def Leppard part of the new wave of British heavy metal or not, I mean, that's kind of here nor there, but it was a sound that I was somewhat unfamiliar with. You know, I was more a Supertramp, and you know, a little more mellow sounding music as far as pop music. Well, as soon as I got into junior high school, which here is grade 7, you know, I was captivated by that sound, and I believe I had told you a friend of mine had given me the Hotter Than Hell album on, you know, the record, you know, the 33 1/3 speed that you put on the turntable, and I listened to that thing over and over and over, and there was something about that sound that I was hooked. And in the Alice Cooper video, I told you, like, I was living adjacent or just down the street to this secondhand store, flea market, and a lot of my record collection in those early days came out of that store. Between the books and the albums. And so after kind of wearing that Hotter Than Hell album to smithereens, I was able to obtain a copy of the first live album, Kiss Alive. And that one, it just blew my mind. Like I was permanently transformed by that. Nod to that record store. Let's go down to the record store. I subsequently ended up finding Love Gun, Rock and Roll Over, Kiss Alive 2, Dynasty came out of that. I think I got Lick It Up there. All the earliest stuff. I ended up buying the first Kiss album and Dress to Kill new in the record store. But I was filling in my record collection through these secondhand scratched up records, and I mean the beautiful thing about the Kiss albums is the artwork was designed to capture you as well, especially once you got past like the Destroyer album was as well. I got out of that store secondhand. I mean these album covers were just something else, right? And so bringing that Kiss Alive album and slapping it on the turntable and listening to those two discs over and over and over, I mean it was such an influence on my life, for good or bad. Like they were the original rock and roll party anthem group. I mean the renditions of We're Gonna Rock and Roll All Night and Let Me Go Rock and Roll, like the just blistering, driving hard rock. And I couldn't get enough of that. And the rest of the album, there was amazing drum solo by Peter Criss, the guitar solos. And as a band, like they just had it together. And so without going into a whole history of the band and specifically Ace Frehley, who really was the influence for me in that band, I see like they worked hard to get where they wanted to be. They came from nothing. And there were 4 dudes in New York City, and they had a drive to be a desire, an ambition to be famous, and they went for it. And it sounded, from what I understand, knowing their history, it wasn't an easy road. They did have a manager, I believe it was Bill Aucoin or Oikoin, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but he got them to where they needed to be. But it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and hard work, and low-paying gigs. And back then they were offered contracts paying them $75 a week for the whole band. Like I'm not sure if that's the exact number, but by today's standards, you wonder, is like, what kind of contract is that? How's that going to cover your expenses to tour, and even if you're just going to bars and clubs in the New York scene, like, yeah, it's just, they started off very meager, and the first album, second album, third album didn't get much traction, but it was that live album that kind of turned them into an act that really in North America transformed the music scene into this arena rock mega spectacle. And just like Alice Cooper was doing it in his own way with a more theatrical approach to shock people, Kiss was doing this larger than life thing. They had the 8-inch platform heels, the costumes, the shoulder pads that were 5 feet wide. Gene Simmons looking like some kind of crazed demon. Paul Stanley doing whatever he was doing. Peter Criss with this larger than life sounding drum kit, and Ace Frehley with that unbelievable guitar tone. And again, the focus as we go on in this video is going to be more towards Ace Frehley, because I do so appreciate him as a member of the band and as an individual artist and as an individual as well. He was self-taught. Guitar, came from a musical family, and he just played the way he needed to play. What I so appreciated with the Kiss sound, and people will say like he was the heart and soul of that band. Not necessarily the brains of the band, but the heart and soul. The incredible sounds he got from his guitar. And as the show progressed through the years, it just kept getting larger and larger than life, with the overblown stage light show and fire breathing and shooting sparks and lightning from your guitar and smoke from the guitar. Like it was just every effort to blow the minds of the audience. And people responded. And yeah, I hooked on to the sound and the spectacle, years after they were in their heyday. But yes, my little 12-year-old mind or 11-year-old mind was thinking, yes, these guys have got it together. And so that started the love affair for this band. But most importantly, trying to be cool like Ace Frehley. He was and is one of the coolest. I mean, yes, Alice on Alice Goes to Hell does have a song that says I'm the coolest. And granted, but Ace just had a swagger and a style and a skill that inspired so many people on this side of the Atlantic to learn guitar, pick up guitar, and the influence is undeniable of how you just go through some of these bands that came up in the 80s and 90s that would point to Ace Frehley as being the one that caused them to want to be a rock and roll star. And I mean, that's a legacy right there. But yeah, I just so appreciate what he's done for music, and not to diminish anything else that the other band members were doing, but like all good things, the band broke up in a quite messy way. There was an inability to manage the success, and that's a pattern I kind of see in a lot of the bands that were coming up in the 70s and 80s. So yeah, Peter Criss was the first to get really booted from the band. He was essentially fired, either through inability to perform or drug habits. Ace was hitting the sauce pretty hard, as well as doing drugs as well. And I'm not going to go into a full history of the band, but yeah, it was a sad thing, and some of it was over money, some of it was just tension among group members, some of it had to do with just an inability to show up and play the songs with any degree of proficiency anymore. And so Ace ended up leaving as well. Whether you believe he was fired or left on his own is kind of irrelevant, but I had the ability or the opportunity to see Kiss back in Winnipeg once they had re-emerged without makeup in the 1980s. And I'm trying to remember, I think that might have been like the very first concert I had been to. And that would have been the Animalize tour. So a very different look, a very different sound. A lot of the old classics, obviously. But without Ace and Peter, it was kind of, it was just another show. Didn't take away my appreciation of the band overall. I continued to listen to that early stuff, and to me that was always the true Kiss, the sound that influenced me and still resonates with me to this day. So let's fast forward all the way up to 2020, 2021, 2022. During that time, I had kind of gone into this in previous videos. And yeah, the sun's getting real low in the sky. We got some fantastic lighting effects going on here. Not sure what that's all about. We'll enjoy it while we can. But yeah, I started seeing all these Kiss live performances on BitChute that people were uploading. And I started checking out some of this stuff. I was like, wow, concerts from Tokyo back in the day, concerts from all across the U.S., some of the stuff from their reunion tour when the original band members got together. It was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And so I started checking out the old guys there. It got my blood pumping again. And so I decided to kind of look up some of these old farts on YouTube, because these guys they're boomers, right? The boomers are the ones that made the music that I listened to growing up. So I started finding interviews, and I looked up Ace Frehley, and these guys actually have channels, and so you're seeing what these guys are up to nowadays. And I had never really got into the Frehley's Comet material or a lot of his solo material back in the day when it was first coming up, and he's well into his 70s by now. I'm pretty sure he's close to the same age as my parents, all of them. But in any case, like I had experienced in the past with, this revelation, wow, all these old bands have got all this material that was hidden to us, in 20, up until 10, 20 years ago, when the internet really fired up. You didn't have access to all this deep archived concert footage and even interviews. And so I was just eating this stuff up. And there was, I know I had given a shout out to, I believe it's called Seton Hill Studios, Seton Hill Productions, where this younger fellow, looks like a millennial, looks to be in his 30s, young enough to be my son, and he's reviewing all this Kiss stuff for the first time, never hearing any of it before, and the reactions were just priceless, like jaw-dropping, like the enthusiasm, the passion, the excitement that was being generated in this young kid, for the way I see it. Like, it was just so heartwarming. It's like, yeah, these old geezers, this, of course, is back in the day, the original stuff, from the Midnight Special, a set list that included Deuce and Hard Luck Woman. Like, to see a generation that had never really been exposed to this music just embrace it. It was so cool. And so it fired me up even more. And so I was just gobbling up whatever I could find on, Kiss, whether it was the whole band or Ace by himself. And I stumbled across what's quite possibly the funniest thing I had seen that year. And it was the Michael Snyder, Tom Snyder, the Tomorrow Show. I think it's Tom Snyder, where they had all four members, and it was just kind of prior to their breakup. And it was a sit-down interview with the four band members in full makeup, and Paul and Gene were there, very businesslike, very moderate. Peter Criss seemed a little edgy or anxious, somewhat withdrawn, maybe even a little paranoid. And Ace, he was looped out of his tree, drunk as a skunk. And it was the funniest half hour, 45 minutes. Oh, the link to that interview is going to be in the description. If you haven't seen that, folks, you got to see that. And what it revealed was this personality that Ace had. And I mean, four guys dressing themselves up in these goofy costumes, the spandex and the makeup and the long hair. I mean, I guess to do this video properly, I should have painted my face and got the black wig or done something special, but it is what it is. In any case, Ace's personality, as drunk as he may be, but his humor came out, his charisma came out. Like, he was instantly bonding with the host, Tom Snyder. And it's like the other guys weren't even there. And you could just see Paul and Gene getting madder and madder and more, losing their patience with Ace. And he completely stole the show. And just go check it out. Trust me, you won't be sorry. And so as I started discovering more of Ace's content, that humor really kept coming through over and over. And part of that is what makes someone, in my opinion, a little on the cool side. Like, that's part of the recipe that needs to be baked in the cake. An ability to laugh at yourself somewhat, ability to laugh at others, and I don't give a rat's ass attitude, and I'm just going to be me. And be part of a multi-million performing band, and having some talent and being an inspirational, like it was just the whole package. And so yeah, just seeing how Ace kind of carried himself through, he never lost any of that. Whereas, you see the other members, and this isn't a knock on them, it was people doing what they're doing. It was like Gene and Paul were like the by the book, we're treating this as a business for profit. And really, in the end, they took themselves so seriously that they ended up losing money some of their tours through mismanagement or bad accounting or who knows what. Because they were always popular. That reunion tour, the crowds kept coming. Whether they were coming for the whole package or, a lot of the feedback I see is Ace centric. We came to watch Ace. He's the one. He's the heart and soul of this place. And so that kind of seems to be the theme recurring. Is that, yeah, this one individual. Would there have been a Kiss without Ace? Quite possibly. I mean, Ace was replaced at at a point in their history. But would they have received the notoriety or gained the notoriety and the fame and the stardom? Would they have been a successful show business act? Well, that's kind of a hypothetical, thought experiment. I don't know. That's a tough one. Could somebody have filled those shoes? Those kind of questions are above my pay grade. But another thing, kind of start winding this down. Thankfully, this isn't going to be as long a video. I was hoping to get this one in under an hour, and I think I'm on pace to do that. And yeah, given the nod to Andy Edwards, like I didn't prepare notes for this. I just figured I'd turn on the camera and start talking and see where we end up. Whether this one is a keeper or not. I mean, it is a keeper because you're watching it. Is anything going to come out of this? I don't know. I'm making these videos as a tribute to the people that shaped my life coming up. And with that, I did want to say the solo material of Ace is another aspect that impressed me. Like, if you recall, back in the 70s, the band was kind of getting tired of each other, and so they released solo albums. And from what I understand, there was a little bit of, I don't know if you'd call it rivalry, but it seemed like Ace was being treated in a bit of a patronizing manner from the other band members, and nobody expected his album to do any well, and it kind of became a gold seller. I don't know if it was a platinum seller, but his was the one that people wanted. And he had some fine tunes on there. And the one that people remember was New York Groove. And that actually is a cover tune. And I'll credit the original artist. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I believe it was a New York act that whatever. I'm not going to try to access my memory. I don't have my laptop in front of me. Like I say, I'm just winging this one. But he pulled that off. Like that is a groovy tune. And he had a talent for selecting songs and then redoing them, putting his own signature on them in a way that doesn't take away from the original, but I enjoy so much more. If you looked on the Dynasty album, that Rolling Stones song, 2000 Man, well, yeah, sure. Mick and Keith may have pulled off a catchy tune when they released it, but Ace slapping his spin on it, I mean, it was so gritty and tough, and it contained that humor, that in your face, and the vocals. Ace was doing the vocals. He early on throughout the Kiss, the career with Kiss, he was hesitant to put his voice on the record. It wasn't until Love Gun and Shock Me, which is another fantastic tune, that we got to hear his vocal stylings. And 2000 Man, like, that's another one. Check that one out. You'll not regret it if you haven't heard that one. And then through the years, I guess with his solo career, there's an ELO hit, Do Ya, that he rearranged for himself, and it's almost like he has this ability to pick songs that it's almost like they were made for him to perform. Maybe you're not into cover acts, but Ace was able to select music that, he was able to put his little bit of flair on, and again, no detracting from the original versions, but the Freely version is quite something else. And so giving a nod to people that inspired you, I think that's a great thing as an artist too. I haven't had time to go back and look at a lot of Ace's material as far as his full solo career, but he has released a couple of albums with cover tunes on them. I don't know if they're necessarily on YouTube, but just reading down the list of songs, like, yeah, that's a good one for Ace to do. Yeah, I recognize that song. I can see why he picked this one. And so he just kind of, through his career in more recent years, like, he was just doing stuff he felt good doing and seemed to be having a fun time. Cutting these records and writing his own original tunes. And yeah, so, similar to Alice Cooper, like, he could have very well come to a tragic end, just the lifestyle he was living, unable to manage the success. So turned to substance abuse, and there were the legendary stories of wrecking the hotel rooms, and that was just an inability to manage your emotions and the pace of life, the pressure, the stress, the success. The industry does push people to the limits, and by that time, yeah, it's not about the cultural influence anymore. It's about the business and keeping this juggernaut going. So I do empathize, and again, a bit of a story of redemption, plucked from the brink of the edge of the abyss there. His life was turned around, and to this day he's still performing. I don't know if I hope he's not doing it for the money. I hope he's doing it for the sheer enjoyment. Some of his 2024, 2025 gigs that I've seen, it's like, yeah, that's how, a 76-year-old dude plays. Like, it's just, the glory is gone, but the youthful spirit is still there. And I do appreciate that. I would never tell anybody, hang it up, you're done. Take you out back behind the barn and put you out of your misery, kind of thing. But yeah, it is kind of that self-deprecating humor. I've seen him posting videos on YouTube on his channel where him and his wife or girlfriend are walking through Walmart picking out T-shirts, and he's making little jokes and cracks into the camera, and that was just Ace. Whether it was Kiss Meets the Phantom in the park, from what I understand, I don't even know how as an acting performance. I remember Andy Edwards hated that film. That was, again, a cultural phenomenon. It was such a bad film that's what made it great. And Ace's cracks and that silly laugh, I mean, that's what people remember. That's like a signature. That's the flair of the cultural icon. So without gushing too much, I guess we've talked enough about this. It's 43 minutes. Start winding it down. I hope you enjoyed that. I mean, it's just a bunch of rambling on about some joy I got from my youth that's been brought all the way up from the deep annals of the past into my present. Enjoyment of music. I still listen to some of this music where I can. Ace is the best. Whether it was, inspiring the likes of the Van Halens or the techniques or the onstage spectacle, it's just everything I needed as a young man growing up to emulate. Now, I never did become a rock and roll hero or a guitar god, But that's what I was shooting for back in the day. It was Ace Frehley that inspired me to pick up a guitar and start learning some of these riffs and having that ambition or even a desire. I've admitted in the past in other videos that lifestyle would not have been for me. I wouldn't be around right now if I had chosen that path. So no regrets for not having taken that path, but I do value my experience as an enjoyer of music, and now as somewhat of a commentator. And so yeah, I don't want to dismiss that commenter in that the music industry is somehow strictly business, and it's always only been about the money. I think there was at one point, and it's been quite a while, at least 30, 40 years. Like probably 30 years for sure, where acts had that kind of cultural impact that really shaped the thinking or the zeitgeist of the industry as a whole. You know, that arena rock paradigm. You know, that caught on in the 70s and 80s, and that's kind of the standard. And Kiss was among the pioneers of that day. And all credit to the rest of the band members, past and present, as well as, you know, all the iterations, whether it was Vinnie Vincent or Bruce Kulick and Eric Carr, like all of them. They all contributed to this monster that has been known as Kiss. But for me, it was always Ace that had the special place in my heart as an artist, performer, iconic figure. So with that, I'll wind this one down, and we'll see you on... I've got a couple more. I hope to upload those shortly. And yeah, I won't spill the beans. You're going to just have to tune in and see what those are all about. Hopefully be before too long. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, set up sock accounts so you can subscribe to all those as well. And we'll see you next time. Rock on.